Before the morgue lights hummed awake, before my blood cooled on stainless steel, there was a plan, a masterpiece of vengeance, crafted by the only man arrogant enough to believe he could outsmart death itself. This is the story of how a surgeon tried to cheat the living, manipulate the dead, and rewrite the truth carved into his own flesh. The fluorescent lights of the morgue hummed with a sound that only the dead seemed to notice. It was a cold, sterile frequency vibrating against the stainless steel table where my body lay. I looked pale, drained of the chaotic ambition that had defined my 40 years on Earth. Standing over me was the medical examiner, Dr. Silas Thorne. He was meticulously arranging his instruments, the metal clinking softly in the silence. But my attention wasn't on the doctor. It was fixed on the viewing window to my left. Beyond the thick glass, huddled in a plastic chair, was Marcus, my former business partner. The man who stole my research, my practice, and eventually my wife. He was in handcuffs, his head buried in his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs. Two stone-faced detectives loomed over him like vultures waiting to feed. "Good," I whispered, though no sound came out. My spirit hovered near the ceiling vents, watching the scene unfold with a grim satisfaction. Cry, Marcus, cry until you rot. I had planned this masterpiece for months. I knew Marcus was coming over that night to demand I sign the bankruptcy papers. I knew his temper was short. I goaded him. I let him scream. I let him threaten to kill me loud enough for the nosy neighbor in 4B to hear every word. And the moment he stormed out, slamming the door, I executed the final phase. I went to the bathroom mirror. I held my favorite scalpel, a size 10 blade, sharp enough to split a hair. I didn't just cut, I calculated. I knew exactly how to angle the blade to mimic a violent attack from a right-handed aggressor standing in front of me. I wanted the arterial spray to hit the wall at a specific height. I wanted Marcus to spend the rest of his life in a cage for a murder I committed on myself. "Brutal scene," the lead detective muttered, stepping into the exam room, interrupting my victory lap. "The suspect swears he left him alive, but we have a witness who heard a death threat, and 10 minutes later, the victim is practically decapitated. Open and shut case, right, Doc?" I smiled, a phantom stretching of non-existent muscles. "Yes, open and shut. Bury him." Dr. Thorne didn't answer immediately. He adjusted his magnified goggles and leaned in close. He smelled of antiseptic and peppermint. He tilted my chin back, exposing the ruin of my neck. "It certainly looks like a crime of passion," Thorne said slowly, tracing the jagged edge of the wound with a gloved finger. "Deep, violent. The force used here was immense, enough to sever the jugular and the carotid instantly." "Exactly," I urged him on, my spirit descending closer. "Write it down. Cause of death, homicide. Perpetrator, Marcus." But Thorne paused. He reached for a small UV light and clicked it on. He shined it dangerously close to the origin of the cut, right behind my left ear. "But what?" the detective asked, checking his watch. "I have paperwork to file." "Come closer, detective," Thorne beckoned. "Do you see these? Right here, at the very beginning of the incision?" I felt a cold shiver pass through my spectral form. I knew what he was looking at. I had prayed they would be invisible amidst the blood. "I see tiny scratches," The detective squinted. "Hesitation marks," Thorne whispered, the words landing like a gavel verdict in the silent room. "What does that mean?" Thorne straightened up, pulling his mask down to reveal a solemn face. "It means, Detective, that the victim flinched. It is a biological reflex. Even a surgeon as skilled as this man couldn't override millions of years of evolution. When he placed the blade against his own skin, his brain screamed to stop. His hand trembled. He made 3 microscopic shallow cuts before he could summon the willpower to make the fatal slice. "No!" I screamed, the sound manifesting as a sudden flicker of the overhead lights. "Ignore that. Look at the depth. Look at the angle. I calculated the angle perfectly." Thorne ignored the flickering lights and continued dismantling my revenge with cold, hard science. "A murderer doesn't hesitate, Detective. A murderer strikes with adrenaline and intent. But a suicide, especially a violent one, the body fights back. These marks prove he tested the blade. He was working up the nerve. Also," Thorne pointed to the end of the wound near my throat. "Look at the trajectory. The wound tapers off here. It wasn't a slash from an attacker following through. It was a pull generated by the mechanics of the victim's own right shoulder. The leverage is all wrong for a homicide." The detective sighed, a long, heavy sound of disappointment. He closed his notebook with a snap. "So, not a murder. Suicide," Thorne declared, peeling off his latex gloves with a snap. "A theatrical, painful, vindictive suicide. He likely wanted to frame someone, but the anatomy doesn't lie, even if the man did." I watched in absolute horror as the detective walked to the window. He signaled the officer inside. I saw the officer nod and reach for his keys. The handcuffs on Marcus clicked open. My enemy looked up, confusion turning into relief, tears streaming down his face. He was free. I had given my life, my blood, and my very soul to destroy him, but in the end, I had forgotten the one rule I learned on my first day of medical school. You can lie to the police. You can lie to your neighbors, but you cannot lie to the flesh.